You're watching New Car Spin. This right here in front of us is the Acura MDX. It is the 2020 MDX A-spec with super handling all-wheel drive, or SH-AWD. It has an updated front end for 2020, slightly different than the 2019. They did something. I can't tell you what it is, but it just looks a little different. And then A-spec badge. You can see the interior, I'll show you that in a second. And of course the gunmetal optional wheels, which look great. This thing overall looks superb. And rather than tell you what this thing is, I'll tell you what this thing is not. How about that? That'll make this for a more interesting video, because this is an interesting car. I had it for a week, and it didn't even feel like it. And you know what they say, time flies when you're having fun. Now this is a V6 engine, 290 horsepower, 275-ish pound-feet of torque. So it doesn't feel very fast, but it has something magical going on with it. Did I use the word magical? Alright, we got the fatter exhaust tips at the end. It's, I think it's the same ride height, but it's got an adjustable suspension. And it's pretty tricked out in the interior. I have to say I'm more of a fan of the RDX because of the size and some of the features, but this being the MDX, it is kind of like true to the form of an Acura. It is the daddy. Sort of like, well, the car is parked behind me here. Let me show you the trunk real quick, because I won't get a chance to show you after this. It is a 3-row SUV. And it has plenty of storage space, and it has no spare tire. Maybe there is. Actually, it has a pretty nice shelf here that stays up. And I think that's part of like a parcel divide. Let's see if I can go under here. No, there is a spare tire. All right. I don't know where the jack went. Good luck finding that. Anyway, power trunk. And pretty roomy inside, as you can see from back here. Alright, traffic is clear. I'm going to step out on the road. Look at that. We got an S-Class W140 and an old Volvo 240 diesel wagon. So I think the MDX falls in the same bracket, or at least it will in the future. Back seat is full of stuff I need to take to the dry cleaners. I got to return my LLD jacket because it sucks. We do have rear climate controls, no heated seats back here, as opposed to what you would get these days in something like a Kia Telluride for less than this. Of course, then on the Kia you have to pay your the dealer ransom fee of like 6 to 10 grand just to pay over sticker to get one. But we'll talk about that later. Here though, in the Acura, you can see the obvious trim. Looks good. A-spec, 4-way lumbar, as opposed to what you get in some other vehicles these days. Nice suede-like perforated interior. What do they even call that these days? I'm not sure. But it's there. Alright, so you know what this is not? This is not a Lexus. It is not something that has an RX badge and designed for boomers. People who are over-medicated and drive too slowly. This thing is for people who want to get somewhere. I think that's what A-spec stands for. It should also be maybe, well, there's another A word. I can't think of it right now. But what it is not is, it is not slow, and it is not just a slow, comfy, luxury family cruiser. It is not anything like that. And nor is it terrible on the road. So let me figure this out. I got to get my seatbelt on and put the gimbal down. I'm going to pause this for a second. I'll be right back. Okay, I am back. And, well, this is not terrible in the rain. I got to drive this in the rain, and I got to say, it grips like a mofo. So, you got to get used to that funky transmission selector, but once you do, you'll like it a lot. And what I've noticed is, train, there it is. What I've noticed here is it does have different drive modes, and I like them all. I just like them all in different ways. So right now we're in normal mode, and you can tell because there's a gray background behind the D. If I was to change dynamic mode by pressing this button, you'll see integrated dynamic system, and then it has sport. And then behind the D, right there, it's red background. If we went into comfort, it would have been blue. But we're going to go with sport, because what sport does is it tightens up the suspension, and it tightens up the steering, and it changes the throttle mapping a little bit. And then, of course, if we press D again, we end up in sport, and D turns into an S. Although I would have preferred this to be a red ring or something when I'm in sport mode, just so I can kind of see it out of the corner of my eye rather than have to take my eyes off the road and look down. But what we'll do is we'll just kind of, well, let me make sure the coast is clear. Yep. All right, so foot's on the brake and go. So it's not the fastest, but it does put the power down with that super handling all-wheel drive. And then when you put it in sport mode, obviously, it's in the right gear all the time. So what we'll do is we'll go through this barrier. No, actually, we'll go this way. And you can see how much it holds those revs while we're driving through here. We'll go right again. It's kind of a nice day out. It's weird too. It's 54 degrees, but it feels like 70. Maybe I'm getting sick again. I don't know. Okay, so obviously you hear a lot of engine, and it's definitely holding gear, and it's a little ridiculous. So what we'll do is we'll put it in drive, and we'll keep it in sport. You still hear the engine. And I'm driving moderately, of course. Okay, so that's kind of an idea of what the MDX sounds like in sport mode. I'm not going to say it's a BMW killer, but I will say it definitely corners like let's go straight. It definitely corners better than an Audi, because what this does not do, again, I'm going to tell you what this doesn't do, it doesn't understeer. If I take this turn, did that just perfectly. And, you know, I gotta say, when you do have to drive this thing like a maniac, or as I would say, spirited, let's do one thing here, change it to comfort. You can always calm down and drive it normally. And to do that, you notice that the suspension definitely eases up on the rebound, and it becomes much more settled, as in subdued, as you drive along. And you can almost not hear the engine as you're cruising along. It just becomes very, very comfortable. And speaking of comfort, you'll see that these seats are really cool looking. They've got some red contrast to them. They've got their kind of A-spec style Swedish fabric, which has been really comfortable in this Texas weather. More comfortable than the climate control, because I gotta say the climate control has been befuddling me. I have never really felt comfortable. I've always found myself adjusting the temperature. It's either too hot or too cold. And, you know, the heated seat button alone, it's like, okay, one press. And then I got this crazy menu that I got to figure out. The other thing that drives me crazy, too, is the recirc button. If I had it on auto, it auto controls the recirculation and the fresh air. But if I'm, you know, getting behind a stinky vehicle or something like that school bus up there, then I want to press recirc. Once I press recirc, auto turns off. And, you know, I guess you could go for a while and forget that auto's off and then realize, oh, the temperature is set to whatever. But I've found that, you know, this climate system needs to be reviewed by Acura to get to be more current. this isn't a slightly outdated interior, but it still works. I mean, I posted on Instagram something about how great these cup holders were. You can have two huge cups in these cup holders, and they have staggered height, and they're easily accessible, but they're not in the way. And you can access all the features and things like that. So I'd say that the dual menu system here, with the map up there, obviously the map looks outdated, and this system here, like you don't know which system is what when you're driving along. But if you wanted to enter in information, then all of a sudden you end up using this screen down here, and that's kind of hard to explain. But let me just show you. If I go to address, I have to use this knob down here, and then when I do that and I want to enter in the city, then this becomes a keyboard. And you can't use this while you're driving, obviously, but I mean, there's just so many things that these two screens do that makes them great. However, the way they look is outdated. However, the functionality is still there. I'd say it's better than the voice recognition, which does not work. I won't even demonstrate the voice recognition because it's quite embarrassing. And as far as fuel economy, if I just use this wheel right here, we will see tire pressure, oil life, blah, blah, blah. I've been driving over 16 hours, and I've averaged 20.6, which is pretty good. I drove it to Austin, and now I'm back in Dallas, and I've been doing some city driving too. So it's been decent. I know that the window sticker, which is in this nice glove box, says 21 is the average. So 20.6 over 21, not bad. They want $56,000 for this. So this is not a Lexus, and it's not a BMW. It's obviously a Honda's attempt at making a competitive vehicle. And I think if you needed the 3 rows, if you needed all that space back there, this would be a good vehicle for you. If you're looking for a sporty, true A-spec style vehicle, they do make this A-spec version in the RDX, which is more or less my favorite, even though it has a 4-cylinder 2-liter turbo in that one. It feels more like a Civic Type R SUV, whereas this feels more like a Honda Pilot, which it basically kind of is. So, what is this one? This MDX is for people who don't want a Lexus RX. It's for people who do not want the maintenance of a BMW or the insurance cost or anything else that goes with that, and people who don't want to fall asleep driving a Mercedes. So what you end up doing is getting this Acura MDX, which is great in the rain. It's superb on the highway, and the different drive modes make it more or less compatible with everyday driving. So now we're in normal. And yeah, I think the RDX is more entertaining from the perspective of the 10-speed automatic versus this one, which is a 8-speed. I think there is a hybrid version of this one with multiple electric motors, and it has like a dual clutch 7-speed. This is definitely not that car, because this definitely doesn't change gears fast enough. So this is definitely not. What am I going to say? This is not your SUV. This is your mom's SUV, but your mom is not old and decrepit and warped on medication, and maybe she's not a boomer, but basically this car is for people who still have life left, and it allows you to sort of just get around town in a sporty, creative way, and enjoy things. Because this interior is a little outdated, and I would prefer the panoramic sunroof in the RDX. Now that I think about it, this video is kind of terrible, but I think you understand the point. This is just an SUV, and I'm not a mommy blogger. And a lot of mommy bloggers will tell you how great this thing is, and I think it's because they are wooed by retail therapy, and I am not. I do not drive 10-year-old cars. I drive new cars. I buy new cars. And as far as new cars go, this one's sort of at the end of its life. But I think that's the beauty of it, because there are two types of buyers. Those who buy the car and those who buy the deal. And I think this is going to be a combination of that pretty soon when this thing heads to pasture. So you might be able to get a great deal on these if they're not moving. Unfortunately, they are the best-selling three-row SUVs. The Acura MDX has outsold the Lexus because the RX never really had a third row for the longest time. So this is a great SUV from the practicality standpoint, and from the sporty aspect, it does provide some element of that. But I think that the RDX is more or less the way to go if you don't need that third row. And the price on this one, I mean, I would say if you're shopping for an Audi Q5 or the Lexus RX, I mean, you owe it to yourself. Well, the Q5 isn't even a third row, but you do owe it to yourself to check out the MDX. My suggestion would be only look at the A-spec version, and you won't regret it. Thanks for watching.